Well, I realize we're a decent ways into the month, but thanks for watching this June episode of Quality of Life. And what we're going to do for these next 2 months is talk about a philosophy of quality of life. Obviously, if you've been watching, you know that I believe quality of life relies heavily on experiences. But we're going to talk about an actual philosophy of it. Now, the reason we're doing that over 2 months is I feel like it has to be broken down because there is an internal aspect of quality of life and an external. And we're going to talk about the internal this month, and then in July, external. But the internal quality of life is the things that you have the control over, or the part of it that you can control. You have the ability to influence, affect, control things that play into your quality of life. And then next month, we'll get more into the areas or ways in perhaps you don't have as much control or you're dependent on others or other circumstances. That's where kind of government comes into play and culture and people groups. But this month, we're going to focus on the internal quality of life and your ability to affect it and see yourself as empowered when it comes to determining your quality of life. Now, the reason this is important is because all of us, I think it's part of human nature, we have a desire to make our lives better. We think there should be a progression to life. We think there should be advancement. There should be movement. Things should be getting better. We should be better off in 5 years than we were today. Hopefully, we're better off today than we were 5 years ago. So we believe there should be that advancement in our quality of life. Now, part of the philosophy of this is that you can improve your quality of life without improving your circumstances. Like I've said, quality of life is not tied to standard of living. We can confuse those two, but all the research shows that that just isn't the case. And this is really backed up by as people understand this. I did a session recently with our staff here at work, and I started by saying, let's just define quality of life. And they were looking at quality of life from a couple different angles in regards to some work-related things. But somebody said that when they think of quality of life, they think of the whole person. Body, soul, and mind was what she said. She didn't say anything about paycheck, size of the house, anything like that that would fall under standard of living. She was talking about the person as a whole. My health, my satisfaction, my happiness, all these things, body, soul, and mind. And that is a good picture of what plays into our quality of life. It's not about changing our circumstances. And so thinking that, oh, things have to change, I have to see things improve or get better. And once I've reached, this level of my career, and once, all of our family stops fighting, and once I'm, recognized by this group, that's just not the case. Quality of life is not tied to that, and you don't have to improve your circumstances to improve your quality of life. And that's because quality of life is not an area. We tend to break our life up into categories or areas, and I know at least men and the way our thinking work, we do this. We think, well, there's my family life. There is my career, my work life, or there's the portion of my life that has to do with physical fitness, and there's the part of my life that has to do with finances. Maybe there's a part of your life that has to do with religion or spirituality. There's, my social life, all these different things, and we break our lives up. And so we could think, well, quality of life is one of those. No, actually, quality of life affects them all. And so it's not an area of your life that you look to boost. You might look to boost some spending and increase your savings to help your finances, or you might decide to spend more time at home or read a book that's going to help with your relationships and boost this area. But really, quality of life affects all of them and has a little bit of a role in each of those areas. It's not a category on its own. So you can improve your quality of life without improving your circumstances. And your quality of life can be improved regardless of your circumstances, regardless of where you find yourself as far as ability, age. There's no barrier or classification, I guess, that we divide people into that automatically puts you at a lower quality of life. And so we tend to think that happiness is something that is found But in reality, happiness for the large part is something that is created. We tend to think, oh, you go find happiness, or you find things that make you happy, or you acquire things happy. No, happiness is mostly internally generated. And especially this month when we're talking about the internal aspect of quality of life, it just makes sense to realize that quality of life and happiness have to do with how we perceive things, how we choose to interpret them, how we choose to respond necessarily more than what we are responding to. So a couple examples in case you need them. Thought these were interesting. I'm reading this because I want to get this guy's name right. Maurice Bickham. Maurice Bickham was a gentleman from Louisiana who was wrongly imprisoned for a crime he did not commit. He sat in prison for 37 years until there were advancements in DNA evidence technology. And when that was done on his case, it was realized that he did not commit the crime, that he was innocent, and so he was released after 37 years in prison at age 78. Spent about half of his life in prison, and his quote afterwards was that he had no regrets. It was a quote glorious experience. I mean, how do you have that attitude about being in prison? That was something certainly not, he had no control over his external circumstances. He chose to accept those. Perhaps another illustration is Pete Best. I don't know if anyone has heard of Pete Best, but I bet everybody's heard of the Beatles. Pete Best was originally the drummer for the Beatles, and in what was kind of maybe a shady deal, the Beatles decided, hey, we don't really want Pete. We met this guy Ringo Starr. We want him to be our drummer now, so we're just going to kind of switch that. And Pete kind of found out through backdoor channels. So he was, after the Beatles went on to, fame and fortune, success and notoriety, Pete Best was interviewed, and he said, looking back on all of it, he thought his life ended up better off. He feels like he ended up better off than if he had been part of the Beatles all that time. And I mean, how in the world do you see that? And so maybe we know of smaller scales of these same kind of things. Maybe we or somebody we know went through a period of extreme sickness or loss, and they come out on the other side. They say, "Man, it just built me as a person. And it was added character to my life, and I'm glad that it happened. I'm glad I went through that." Or people go through financial hardships, and they say, "Well, actually, this ended up somehow being a good thing for me." And I think we look at those things and we say, okay, yeah, I'll take you at your word that you're happy or that you think it ended up being good. But man, I'd much rather be happy without having gone through that. We somehow think that's more real. If there's somebody who lives in a mansion at the top of the hill and they just have all the possessions and everybody knows their name and listens to them, and they would say 1 through 10, their happiness is a 9. And then you have somebody who really struggles and is constantly fighting and having to work, and nobody knows who they are, and they would say that their happiness 1 through 10 is a 9. They both are saying 9, but in our minds we think, well, I'd rather be this person. Somehow that seems more real. If somebody actually has the possessions, actually has the standard of living, somehow that's more real. If they haven't gone through the hardship, but that is just not the case. Our quality of life, our happiness, is in large part what we make of it. So, regardless of our circumstances, and maybe without changing our circumstances, we can improve our quality of life. You have the ability to have the same quality of life as the richest person in the biggest house with the most notoriety, because quality of life is based on experiences, and experiences are all created equal. The experience you have of satisfaction of playing with your children, the experience you have of solving a problem at work, the experience you have of getting outside on a beautiful day, the experience you have of doing something that makes you feel happiness or success or meaning are just as significant as whatever experiences you think are happening on the other side of the fence. And so, because all experiences are created equal, we all can create our own positive experiences, and we can all add internally and affect our quality of life. So, you have to do things that increase your quality of life. Find out the things that you like. Find out the things that make you happy, that make you pleasurable. I was looking through my Facebook memories today and saw that several years ago I talked about how I wanted to go whitewater rafting for years and years and years. It had been a long time, and I had trouble getting a group together. And finally, we went and did it apparently like 4 years ago today. And I was putting how great that was. So I had found something. Hey, this is gonna be fun. I want to do it. I worked towards it. We went whitewater rafting. Find things that help you feel successful using a skill you have or contributing, and find things that add meaning to your life, and do those. And do those in a way where you're not dependent on outside assistance or outside help, because you have a internal control around your own quality of life. When you do that, you'll see it raised. And then when you raise your quality of life, I think you'll see that some of those other aspects of your life that we talked about, you'll see those raised as well. If you're a happier, healthy, better person, you're going to see your relationships increase. Perhaps you'll start participating in better habits. You'll quit doing the things that cause you guilt, and somehow that will affect your finances and those things. So you have control over your quality of life, and I would encourage you to use it.